May I invite all our panelists to please join us on the stage. And before we begin, while they come up on stage, we'd like to thank our partners, our team partner WhatsApp, co-powered by Amazon Pay, spend management partner Encash in association with Perfios, payments partner Cash Free Payments, and CEO's dinner partner HSBC, our communication partner Kalera, banking partner Standard Chartered Bank, our diamond partners PayU, AWS, Kia.ai, and Paytm, and our networking partner Buddy Loan. All right, everyone, we begin with our next panel discussion, which is on War of the Super Apps. Moderating this session is Mr. Neelesh Gupta, Head of BHIM and NETC, National Payments Corporation of India. And on the panel, we have Mr. Naveen Chaluvadi, CDO of Yes Bank, Mr. P.R. Rajagopal, Executive Director, Bank of India, Mr. Abhijit Kamalapurkar, Managing Director and CEO, NSDL Payments Bank, Mr. Sandeep Ubale, CGM, Digital Transformation and E-Commerce at State Bank of India, Mr. Akhil Handa, Chief Digital Officer of Bank of Baroda, and Ms. Deena Jacob, Co-Founder and CFO, Open Financial Technologies, Bankopen. Let's have a round of applause for this distinguished panel that we have on the stage. And over to you, Mr. Gupta, for moderating this.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible to all of you. So the topic for the day is War of Super App, and when we hear this term Super App, somewhere we go back to 2010 when it was first spoken by Mike, who was the CEO of BlackBerry, and since then the term has become Ferrari of App, as announced by Gautam Adani in one of the recent communication. So we have seen this journey in last 12 years. Right from the Chinese market, where we had the Alipay, the WeChat, and then South Asian countries where we saw Grab and Gojek kind of creating that kind of aura of super app. And now in the Indian context, we are actually seeing this war happening, right? With Jio coming into the picture, with Tata's coming into the picture, with Adani's getting into it. We also have heard the recent announcement by by Shriram Group and by Muthoot Group. All of these guys are also getting into the super app kind of ecosystem and trying to kind of serve their consumer. And for this, again, if you look at the last 12 years, we have seen a lot of bundling, unbundling, and rebundling happening. So with this, I'll start off with the same bundling, unbundling, and rebundling, and I'll request Mr. Sandeep to please let us know what are the possible strategies that the banks are looking at in terms of super app, and when they look at from the perspective of bundling, unbundling, and rebundling. Sandeep, sir.
I hope I am audible now. I am Sandeep Ubale. I represent State Bank of India. So when we talk about super apps, what exactly it means? What we try to do is that on one app, we try to bring in our in-house services and also some third-party services. Now, where to strike the balance? Because when it comes to third-party services, there is no limit to it, considering that there are around 5.7 million apps available on app stores, around 6 million. Which services to bring, and how do we align our in-house services with these third-party services, whether there is any relation between these services, and how do I manage my back-end systems when I am talking about so many apps in my single app. So it becomes a challenge from the technology point of view, because when we talk about super apps, it's not only about bundling of multiple services in one app, but then you have to also take care of the customer experience, and the apps should not reside in your app just for the sake of it. There's no point in having 100 apps in your one app and then 50% of them either not functioning properly or functioning only with limited capabilities. Besides that, if you have a user base of say 1 million, then you come to know that though you are having, is there some disturbance? So if you are having say around 100 services on your app, but 70 to 80% of your users are using only 40% of them. The remaining 60% perhaps don't use the other services and they remain there, which clutters your infra and only gives you an illusion that you are having a super app. So all these things are there, but this is something which has come. We did launch our super app way back in 2017, and it had been a grand success. But in last 5 years, we also came to know that we have loaded our app with certain functionalities, which perhaps need not be there, and we also took a conscious decision of removing them. So, so with these opening remarks, I will leave the forum open for the other speakers.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep sir. So with this, I'll take the question to Akhil. What are the value propositions for a super app which can give consumer the convenience and the better consumer experience?
See, overall, if you look at what Mr. Ubale just mentioned, right? You need to find, you can have a super app, but what is the core proposition? And is it the objective cannot be that you have to bundle in 100 apps for 100 different things and bring out one app. Does it really make sense to mix banking, grocery, music streaming, shopping, everything into an application? Maybe, maybe not, right? To my mind, there are only 2 apps globally who've been able to do this to an extent. And the most successful, of course, is WeChat, which is probably the granddaddy of super apps. With about 1.3 billion users, monthly active users. I think everybody else can have that as the North Star. It's a nice ambition to get there, but it's incredibly hard to really design an all-encompassing super app without cluttering, without alienating the consumer, getting him actually disillusioned with the experience. It's not easy to bundle in so many things. There is, without naming anyone, I think there's a player in the country who's attempted to do that. Putting in close to about 4,000 crore rupees into the application, getting in about 425 mini apps, bundling it into the mother app. Ultimately, it just did not take off.
True.
Because the consumer needs to know what he's getting in an application, and I don't think it makes sense, for example, in our context, to merge a TikTok-like experience into a banking application.
Absolutely.
Right? So to that extent, our view is when we rolled out Bob World, which is our super app, we take it only as far as a financial superstore. Financial superstore plus a few other adjacencies, which would make natural extensions to the banking experience.
Right.
Beyond that, I think it is not our remit to start bundling in different things, because quite frankly, one of the things that you mentioned is, other than just alienating the consumer, it becomes just too heavy to start bundling in so many things together.
True. And it sometimes also wonder whether it is the consumer who needs the super app or is it whether the fintech who needs the super app, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think it also, to an extent, reflects a lack of clarity.
True.
Where if you're trying to bundle in everything, I think you do not know what exactly do you want to deliver to your customer, or rather, what does your customer want from you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And what we've seen in our experiences, we have 250 services in Bob World application. But the ones that will see 90% of the traction are probably 10,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So beyond the point, there's a long tail, and there is a tail that you require to be able to test out things, to be able to do an A/B on them, and then be able to keep some of them, remove some of them, embed some of them deep inside. But you have to make it a living experience, not just a static experience, and which is why it's incredibly hard to get it right.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with this, Akhil, let me just take the question from a different perspective. The role of fintech, right? I mean, we all are mostly sitting here from the bank, and we see fintech as a very good value-add proposition while we are putting together the super app. So, Rajagopal sir, if you can just bring in your thoughts on what is the potential role of fintechs in helping banks put together the super app for the bank.
Yeah. So thank you, Neelesh. See, basically, I fully agree with what Akhil has just told about super app, and especially in the context of banks. At our level, especially in our bank, we don't really believe that we have a product which bundles everything in the world and then clutters it. So basically, we also see our app experience as extension of whatever financial services we provide to the customers. And I am looking at, as far as the role of the banks in super app, instead of saying that no, they have a great role to play, no doubt about it. But one thing that I'm looking at, basically fintech experience, is in the platform banking. And platform banking is something that is going to take off very, very vigorously in this country. And ONDC as well is coming as a non-profit organization which is going to really challenge whatever proprietary super apps are there in the market. So I feel fintech will have a great role to play in platform banking than super apps. So that is my view.
Sure, sure. So with this, Naveen, if you can also, what we have seen with super apps, right? I mean, typically, are they also super quick in terms of bringing the consumer propositions to the market from that sense? So what are your views from that sense? Are super apps really super quick in terms of delivering consumer propositions?
Yeah. So just to tell you that the super apps that we are seeing, it's not just about the quickness or it's not about the technology. I think what they bring onto the table is how well they understand the customer, how well they understand the customer experience. So, for example, I'll tell you, someone wants to build a super app, they pick up a category. They have to make sure that the category, when they are building in super app, is as good as a marketplace. If you look at travel as a category, are we doing better than a Make My Trip or any other name in that particular category? If we are not able to do that, not only in the front end side but also at the back end side, it doesn't really make sense for us to create something which is suboptimal for the customers. So when you look at some of these people who have attempted to make super apps, I think they have gone beyond the tech part and they have also looked at what is happening at the back end. How do we actually manage the customer service piece? Because that's also very important. For example, if someone is actually booking a bus ticket, the common question that you and me would have when you book a bus ticket is, where is the bus stop? On which side of the road, right? Are we in a position to answer such questions when a super app actually gets such queries from the customer, right? These are the things that I think we'll have to be taken care of if we have to build a full tech super app. And secondly, I think fintechs also have an advantage over banks because when we look at super apps, it could be for commerce, it could also be for banking and finance, like our friends on the panel already told that I think probably a good area to look at is a financial marketplace or a limit super app to the banking and finance. In that case, probably we'll have to look at a experience that we want to provide to a customer. Can a customer come onto the application and see that he or she would be able to pick up a deposit product from, say, State Bank of India and a loan product from, say, a HDFC Bank? Are we in a position to create that particular experience? We may be in that position probably a few years from now when account aggregator, OCEN or UPI equivalent on liability side come into play. That is when probably we will also be able to look at providing a full-fledged super app experience for our customers. What does it mean? Probably we'll also have to liaise with the regulator to see if current parabanking guidelines can be extended to make sure that there is a collaboration that's happening between the financial institutions to offer each other's financial products. Obviously, the commercials will be taken care of. And secondly, I think we also have to wait and watch in terms of how we will be able to also leverage some of these new networks that are coming in, especially in the OCEN. Can it probably in a half a decade's time, can it actually also solve the customer experience related aspects of it? Like BBPS, when it came, it actually took some time, but now I think it's completely solving not only the transaction experience but also the complaint redressal experience. Similarly, probably over a period of time, we can see the ONDC coming in. So I think it's not about fintech or bank. It's about, again, it's not about the speed of technology. It's all about how well you want to understand your objective, how well you want to deliver your objective, how deep are you willing to go into delivering this particular objective is what I thought is very important in super app being successful.
Right. So somewhere where you are heading, Naveen, is in the consumer life cycle, there is consumer acquisition, there is a consumer activation, engagement, retention, and lastly monetization, right? So what you're trying to say is that in days to come, we should look at a kind of a common ecosystem that is contributing to these 5 goals and leveraging it for their own self, right? Very well said. With this, Abhijit, I mean, I'll come back to you, or rather I'll come to you. We have seen very aggressive strategies being adopted by some of the newcomers in the space of super app, right? I mean, somebody is doing very aggressive strategy of acquiring distressed companies. Somebody is acquiring at a very, very high level of value. Somebody is kind of consolidating all their channels of distribution into one, and so on and so forth. What do you believe is the right position for the bank to adopt while non-banking entities are taking those strategies?
Hello. Many thanks for the question, and this is one question which I think everyone sitting on this panel and being a banker is answering to their boards and everything, that the fintechs are taking out the accounts and why are the banks not getting these accounts. I think this is a common question which we all answer. I don't think that is the truth, because the image which is created that fintech is agile, no doubt. They are very clear that they want to create something very quickly. They are able to do that. While the bank's image has been that they are very slow, it is a decision-making issue, all those kinds. But in reality, let us look at it like this. It's not about a fintech technology or a bank. It is also about what is the platform banking, and I'm drawing words from most of the panelists. What has been getting created as an infrastructure by the country itself, like you yourself are from NPCI are creating UPI, UPI Lite, BHIM, which you are heading. The other day it was more about ONDC, account aggregator. These are the infrastructures which are getting laid down by the country itself. How much is the bank partnering into this? Most of the banks are partnering into it. Most of the super apps, fintechs are all partnering to it. I think that this is the way to go ahead, and this is the way the country will go. Furthermore, I personally believe that most of these apps, most of this, the noise which happens is more on the metros and the suburbs, which we are seeing all across. I had one data point that, in the last 1 year, there was $1 billion of cashback given only in the metros by most of these guys. Is this the only way to converge? Probably, I think for the country to grow with this ONDC account aggregator models, I think the tier 3 to tier 6 is where exactly we need to spread ourselves and go ourselves. At this point of time, for those guys, it is more of an experience and getting the banking needs. How do we present them these banking needs? I think the platforms, the banks, and the super apps or the fintechs all will have to aggregate and collaborate. I know there is a war, the title is War of Super Apps, but I can promise you that war doesn't result into anything. We are seeing it live in some context, but I think last state is peace and collaboration, which will actually take the whole thing forward. That's my view.
Absolutely. So with this, Deena, I mean, let me bring you in, right? I mean, you're the possible only fintech player in this panel. So how are you believing that you are helping the banks? I mean, what is the role that you see of a fintech in terms of helping the banks?
So when I look at a super app concept itself, right, we have seen the evolution from there was a times where there was a bundled services consuming and then there was unbundling which was happening, particularly the time when apps and the consumption, the way in which we consume transformed. And that's the time when we were so used to each of the services being delivered in a particular manner, which to the point was what Naveen was also mentioning about, right? Do you want to, if you want to book a bus, you need to understand which is the nearest bus station. So that's the part where different services got unbundled and apps got created. And then we saw the wave of a rebundling happening because there's the digital native generation which came up, and then people got used to this. And that's where we started seeing the convenience of rebundling happening. And that's where, if you look at it, the current state is wherein we are seeing ecosystems being built. And that's where it's not about the war or a friction, but it's about how different parts of the ecosystem can actually collaborate. And this is where I believe each one, I mean, whether it's app, fintech, banks, each of us have the strengths that we play out on. And it's going to be a collaboration which is going to bring the best out of everything. And the good part is that in the last, I would say that this all started about 6 to 7 years, this trend started. But in the last 3 to 4 years, and there was a time when probably, this topic was very relevant, maybe 3 to 4 years back when there was a war. But now, different parts of the ecosystem understand it's all about how you collaborate and handhold and bring things together. And last 3 to 4 years, I can confidently see that each of the parts are doing their part in terms of what is my strength, whom do I collaborate with, and how do I serve the customer better. And which is where, right from the platform banking to the place where in the embedded finance and where the open banking enables this whole thing of where transaction, understanding the customer, getting this data from multiple places and giving them, serving them in a platter in terms of what is required for you without having any kind of cognitive load, how you can consume services and how you can meet your end goal together. And that is very important to be bundled along with contextual banking. And that's where fintechs, while they are solutioning for the customer need backwards, bank in the back end is giving that kind of very big collaborative support in terms of how we both can come together to get the transaction completed. And super apps, to my mind, will never be complete unless you are enabling the customer to conclude the transaction, even from a payments perspective, end-to-end banking, and then again the goal for which that ecosystem is coming together. And that's where I believe this is going to be a very interesting era of collaboration, and there is absolutely no war of friction is where I see.
So the word you picked up, right, the collaboration, and taking the cue from the word, the next question, which is, do you believe, and this is for all the panelists, right? I mean, do we believe that there is a role of a possible open source ecosystem for all the banks and fintechs to be created in our country, which can contribute to the common objectives, common feature sets, maybe common platform objectives, and retrospectively fit it back to the individual banking ecosystem and the application. So what do you believe? I mean, Akhil, let me start off with you.
I think overall, if you, what you just articulated could be, again, I think this is blue skies, right? Getting everybody together, putting all their products in the same one. See, in banking, what happens is generally there are two levels of differentiation. One is a product and the other is service. In most cases, banks on the main street would have similar products. What really differentiates is the service levels, and this is what would be able to your pricing power really depends upon service, and of course at the end of it what is your CSAT, etc., and how you're able to maintain it, right? So to that extent, I think sure, at some point, if you want to have a more an aggregated view of a product purchase, product discovery journey, you can have it, no problem. But I think life cycle management of all the products of all institutions together, to my mind, is very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I get that. Deena, what do you think about it?
So my thought is that this open communities, or rather for themes, this will evolve. These ecosystems will evolve by themes, in fact. So which is where the consumer, what are the different themes that the consumer? It will look more like communities wherein different interests bind you.
True.
Similarly, the different objectives what bind would break out into different ecosystems, which is where the consumption, it need not necessarily be too many, your apps, or rather your ecosystem on wherever you consume would not look like the fragmented ones that you see today, but there will be intelligent bundles which will come up. And that will be defined by the themes which you go by. And which is where there's a huge scope for the best of the best coming together. There again, to the point of the clutter, to the point of what are the solutions to be chosen. And this is where, the open communities and the collaboration would be making a lot of difference. And I believe that's the way in which future would go.
Great point, Deena. Rajagopal, sir?
Yeah, I fully agree with what Deena has just said. One thing is actually thematic, move towards thematic way of doing things will happen, certainly. Another thing is, see, one important thing that everybody has to look at is the P&L effect on all this. Okay, so we can have the going forward, see, even financial services, I see a lot of commoditization happening in terms of product profiles, in terms of the way services are done. Tomorrow, if the regulator comes and says that there will be a portability of accounts, which account aggregator has already started. So basically, the kind of the service experience matters a lot insofar as retaining a customer and continue to serve the customer. So in that context, open communities will come to me, and then will be able to give us a lot of the avenues in terms of developing and integrating myself with the open platforms that are already going to come up going forward. And especially serving these communities also will help me in terms of managing my P&L better. So in that context, open source has a great role to play than typically proprietary technologies, which are very, very costly for us.
Absolutely.
In terms of actually from the P&L perspective. Okay, that's my...
Great point, sir. Naveen?
Yeah, so I fully agree that category-based innovation will happen, and that is where I think we will have to look at how the frameworks will be there for each and every category. Two critical things that I believe are important is it has to be secular, which means everyone will have equal right to participate in those category-based initiatives. And second thing, obviously, the security. The secular and security are the two words that comes to my mind, which will make sure that we have a framework which invites all the open source technologies or open source platforms to come in together and provide services to the customer. And lastly, obviously, like while we may be sitting here and we may be thinking that it's too far, that journey is very tough, but I think it's matter of another 6 to 7 years where we'll be able to figure out in terms of how the entire, not only the front end orchestration, but also the back end and orchestration can also be made more efficient to make sure that we actually own up the end-to-end customer experience.
Issue with am I audible? Yeah, very interesting topic, open source. What my view is that yes, open source has to be there because there are some generic requirements which are common across all banking institutions or financial institutions. These generic requirements, if they are available at one place, then the individual banks or financial institutions, they did not invest individually for these services. They can be pulled from this open source, and then at the front end, you can customize your product the way you want, the way your board allows you to do, and the way regulator wants it. And then you already have an established customer base who can use these services. Like we are going ahead with Indian Bank Blockchain Infrastructure Corporation, where the blockchain technology, which is a generic technology, will be available on a single platform. And then there are around 18 banks which are going to use this technology, but they will be using it on their own individual trade platform. So this is where we are moving. This leads to individual banks not investing on their own in the blockchain infrastructure, which is very costly. When we talk about payments, when we talk about asset product, liability products, there is definitely a scope where the generic services are available at one place, the infra is available at one place, and then the players, the identified players, they can hook onto that and consume those services, but at the front end, they will decide how to make these services available to their customers. Because every bank will have their individual customer experience policies, other things, and they would like to make available all these things in a different manner. And as our friend said, there is always a P&L element. So what your CFO allows and what your various credit committees allow, that also comes into consideration. So it's not that on open source something is available and all banks start giving same service, and then it's only the customer service which becomes a differentiator. Customer service, of course, is something which has come in last 10 years. Before that, it used to be only pricing, which used to differentiate from one bank from another bank. But now, of course, customer service, the kind of service that we are able to give, anywhere, anytime banking, and how easily you are able to provide, that differentiates one bank from another bank. But then, at the back end, if you are having some open source, from where you can pull the services and make available to your customer in a seamless manner, then that is where we are moving. And collaboration is the key for this. How big or how small the player may be, but at the end of the day, some collaboration has to be there so that it's a win-win situation for all players.
Right, sir. Just to add, so the online dispute management is something which is also very similar on the lines of creating a standardized customer service handling process, right? So with that, Abhijit, sir, to you, what are your thoughts on the open source community for overall goods of the consumer handling for the banks?
Yeah, I think the panelists, I completely agree with them, especially with Rajagopal sir when he says that, P&L has to be the main thing where you actually see what exactly you are going to spend. I agree with Akhil also that when he says that, it is about the product and the service. The amount of time you get into creating a product or, innovating or getting a change into the product, and this can be even regulatory required, like, NPCI also mandates certain changes in every of the product. Each bank has to invest and get these products live. That product live itself takes a lot of energy and time, and then it naturally affects something which is called as the service to the customer. If you don't serve the customer rightly, and as Sanjay Ubale sir said, if you don't serve the customer rightly, nowadays it's not the pricing power, it is more about the service power. If you don't have the service power and if you are stuck with this, then you have a challenge. Look at yourself. You yesterday launched UPI Lite on which application? On BHIM, right? So you are also trying to create BHIM as an open source technology where every one of us can link up to. I think these institutions, infrastructures which the country is creating are going to be very useful to us. So we don't keep on doing the individual changes as our end, but we actually hook on to this and we are able to provide the right service to the customer. Essentially, it is not about we providing service to the customer. Essentially, it is more about the last mile guy getting the right service which is expected from a bank. And then, there is no friction available over there. That's my simple thought.
Great point, sir. So with this, Akhil, I'll come back to you. We have seen we are leveraging both the banking and the fintech ecosystem to kind of create new technology innovation to help our own banking consumers. What is that banks are thinking of to bring in new consumers who are not existing consumers to the bank?
See, again, when we talk of banks, not every bank is in the same position, right? And there is a State Bank of India, which is banker to half the country, right? And BOB is reasonably large, right? And then there are banks which are still young and nascent, right? Now, so this strategy really first depends upon what how mature are you in terms of your own customer base. Now, if you have we have a customer base of 16 crore customers, So yes, for me, NTB acquisition is important, but it is far more important to be able to service and sell to my existing customer base. And frankly, it's a lot easier as well, right? So today, if you talk to any fintech in say lending space, the biggest issue any fintech has is the CAC, and the CAC has gone through the roof. And unless you're able to control the CAC, your unit economics do not work out at this point in time. And in this day and age, when unit economics has become de facto, the pole star, right? You have to get these things right. So there are new models emerging for. So if you're a younger fintech, younger bank, the models is you have to my mind, piggyback on a larger distribution base, and that's the way to effectively be able to manage your CAC. You cannot purely bank on a D2C kind of a model because the CAC is just very high. And at the same time, there are also established large distributors available in the industry who can help you get there, right? So, for example, we partner with a lot of fintechs and other providers where, if the service is useful for the customer, but it is not core to my own business, I would still want to get that service off. So, case in point is, let's say, a tax payment, right? So every consumer needs to do their tax filings end of year, right? And it is becoming more and more complex as years go by, right? And this is a service that it's not core to the bank, but every banking customer needs it in one way or the other. So we've partnered with 3 tax providers, right? And depending upon silver, gold, plat, you can just pick the service levels, have a CA engagement, etc. And that's really what it is. Now imagine if that guy were to actually acquire a taxpayer and then serve at a 200 rupee price point. He would have ended up doing more CAC just than just getting the revenue out of it. So it makes a lot more sense to partner up in that way. And I think again at the end of the day, every institution, organization, entity has to figure out what their reason of existence is, and then the way to the market.
Sandeep, on this same point, right? I mean, continuing it further, Yono currently serves both existing to the bank consumer as well as new to the bank consumer. So, what has been the strategies that or the thought process that SBI has been having in terms of looking at both of these consumer sets? Like Akhil rightly said, you are probably bankers to half the nation, and yet you are trying to kind of have a product super app which is trying to acquire another half of the nation.
No, it's not like that. New to bank, NTB. This is something, this term has been talked about in last 2-3 years only.
Right, sir.
The bankers, means my generation bankers, when we joined bank, this was something which was never talked about. We used to talk about expanding our existing customer base by bringing in new customer to the bank. But now the buzzword is that a customer may come and use your services without becoming your actual customer.
Absolutely.
Even you are not creating a CIF, and then still you are allowing that customer to use your infra. So this is a new trend which has come in. And at SBI we are also, since we are part of the banking system and very active player, we also have our own strategies on how to acquire these NTBs without having this condition of they becoming a traditional customer of the bank in a traditional way, like opening of account and things like that. But having said that, do I really need to do that? And am I doing it by compromising with my existing customer base, which had been loyal to me for over so many years? So I need to draw a line somewhere.
True.
How much I am going to allocate for those set of customers who will be coming on my platform only to use it for a temporary period and then they will exit? What revenue I am going to get out of it and what business sense it makes to me? And then what happens to my existing customers? it is possible that while I am deriving some satisfaction that so many new to bank customers, NTBs, use my platform, I might not be knowing my own customers might be using some other bank's NTB for some other services.
Absolutely.
So this is something a very tricky issue. But yes, as it happens, some concepts they do come in, they become popular. There's a lot of noise around it. All banks try to have a share of their own in that pie, whatever it is available. And at SBI, we are also going ahead with it. But of course, we are going ahead in a very cautious manner because what matters for a traditional bank like SBI and maybe Bank of Baroda, what Akhil was trying to do, that what infra I am having at the back end to serve all these things. And am I going ahead and mindlessly investing in infra just to cater to certain concepts which are being talked about, and I need to be part of it just for the sake of being part of it.
Absolutely.
So that we need to take into consideration first. Whether I really have the ability. Being a big bank doesn't mean that tomorrow some 1 lakh or 2 lakh customers who are not actually my customers but are trying to use my platform on daily basis, and my transaction per second suddenly goes up. Do I really have that capacity? And do I really need to further invest in my existing infra to cater to this segment of the customer who perhaps may not come back to me after using my services only for one time and may not generate any revenue also for me.
Correct.
So, and of course, then there is a compliance, there is a risk which is involved, then the regulatory guidelines are there, which I need to adhere to, whether I serve to these customers one time, 2 times or 3 times. It remains same. The investment remains same.
I get that.
Thank you.
I get that. So Rajagopal sir, I mean, what is the view of Bank of India? I mean, while we heard Bank of Baroda and SBI, how Bank of India you are looking at this opportunity, NTB and ETB?
See, it's a great topic. First of all, Akhil has perfectly pointed out what is the customer acquisition, especially customer acquisition cost. And cost of customer service is also very, very important, which Mr. Ubale was referring to from the SBI perspective, saying that first is acquire a customer, you incur cost, and then service the customer, you incur cost. From my perspective and from our internal discussion that we continue to have on a daily basis, I'll just borrow the words that Deena was referring to about bundling, unbundling, and rebundling. So what I'm basically seeing, in the financial services is there is a lot of unbundling that has already happened with respect to revenue streams of banks. See, traditional banks had very, very specific revenue streams. In terms of fees, if I actually give a demand draft, I used to charge money. If I give a checkbook, I used to make money. Okay, if I give a one folio charges, also I used to make money. There are a lot of fee income that we used to generate in good old traditional banking, which has completely dried up. So what has happened is many of these revenue streams today are unbundled by fintechs. Now, the question is whether on the basis of whatever revenue streams that have been unbundled, whether they can scale up, and there is a business proposition over there. There is a business proposition that we can continue to actually be there in the business is something that is seriously in doubt, because the traditional banks are also coming back and then pushing back all these fintechs who are actually taking away their revenue streams. So what is happening is slowly there is a scaling issue over there, there is a funding issue over there, and here loss of customer issue over here. So what is happening is the partnership being forced by the ecosystem. So again, borrowing what Deena has said, partnership is forced by the ecosystem. So going forward, what happens is it is not about new to the bank or something like that, or existing to the bank or something. Basically, what we are looking at is what I would call it as a new to service customer, because I have, say, 12.5 crore customers in our bank. How many services my customer uses on the basis of whatever infrastructure I have and what kind of partnerships I have, whether my customer uses all the services or not, is something that I have to really look. Bug for the customer, like exactly what Akhil has said, unit cost is something that I need to look. It is not only fintechs who have to look at the unit cost. I also have to look at the unit cost and see how many services that my customer consumes from me in terms of being from the point of perspective of surviving in the ecosystem. So that is very, very important from the point of view of, and you can call it new to bank, or you can call it new to service, or whatever it is. Basically, the fact is, ultimately, what matters is, my investment has to match in terms of protecting the customer base today. That's what is happening. That is my view.
It's a great point. Let me just quickly take the views of Naveen and Abhijit as well. And I'll come back to you, Deena, as well for this particular point. And I want to have the conclusion with you. So, Naveen, what do you think? You've been sponsoring some fintechs in this space to kind of acquire new consumers and new services as well, right? So, what do you think?
Like rightly pointed out, it all depends on which phase of evolution as a bank you stand in. We are definitely a younger bank. We definitely want to make sure that we have more and more opportunities to engage with these customers. So for us, any platform, when we build, we look at both serving ETB, and we also are eager to have more and more NTBs coming into the platforms. For a simple reason, because our existing bases are not as high as the larger banks on this panel. What we should also understand that evolution of UPI and some of these concepts like tokenization, etc., we have actually come in very handy to make sure that we have a start proposition to the new NTB customers also, to make sure that they can experience what is available on this platform using a UPI or using a PG or a tokenization kind of thing going forward. So what it helps us is to advertise our service levels or service quotients to these customers, and then hope that a part of them will also try to make their choice to bank with us in a longer term. So for a bank which is young, this entire properties that we built, we not only built for our existing customers, but we also hope to make sure that these properties are well equipped to invite new customers to experience our overall service levels, and make sure that we have an opportunity to engage them with a longer term.
Get that. Abhijit, some last thoughts from you?
Yeah, so I am actually confused because 3 million bankers sitting over here owning 80 crores of the customer. I just did a total of what they said, and you are asking me who is a payment bank, having zero asset side to the balance sheet. And we are saying that, we want to acquire a new to bank customer. Sanjay sir saying that, we have to be very careful of what infrastructure we are spending, how much cost to the customer is going, which is the service that we are doing. I am a wafer thin margin bank. I need to be very, very careful and selective of what I am doing. I cannot just go ahead and say that, I'll open crores and crores of account, and people have done that and bear the brunt, which we don't want to go into. We are very careful. We are genuinely very careful. We want to judge the reason, as I borrow from Akhil. It's the evolution stage of the bank. We are very nascent. We might be, hardly 3-4 years old, 5 years old in this, 4 years old in this ecosystem. So we genuinely want to build ourselves. Now, the build ourselves is morely with the partnerships, morely with our own digital framework, which we are trying to do, looking at a particular segment and the target of the market, looking at the needs of the market, deriving where exactly the thought processes are going for all the customers. That's where we want to make our thought process on. And naturally, tendency is to first look at the P&L, first look at where exactly we want to be of an ability to serve the customer with, being able to survive yourself. If we are not able to survive ourselves and we are saying that, we'll serve the customer, we are lying. So, none of us will be doing that. So we have to survive ourselves and we have to serve the customer. That's where we are. I appreciate this. They have a larger challenge of managing these 80 crore customers. I am a few lakh, and we should be there in some time to do something better. Thank you for that.
Thanks. Nice point, Abhijit. So, Deena, conclusion with you. You are probably one of the neobanks acquiring consumers without differentiating between the ETB and the NTBs. So how you look at the consumer acquisition from your perspective?
So we are primarily SME focused, and from this perspective, both from a banking or rather acquisition of them coming into the banking perspective, the way I look at it is, even what we do is, for anybody who wants to bank or anybody who wants to run their business, it could be currently, say they are doing it on cash or they are doing it on different systems. So when they come into the system, how do you make the entry exceptionally easy? Which is to the point of, Akhil was making this point, and which is where digitization comes into picture. And when what we do is through digitization, make it so universal now, especially with the kind of digital infrastructure that we have, how the country has progressed in terms of, even for that matter, digital penetration, and even for that matter, the internet penetration. It's exceptionally easy to reach out to them at a very low cost. If we are doing it the right distribution manner, in the way in which they understand, in the way in which they want to consume, which is where the customer first kind of approach. So that's what we have done as well, because banking is a contextual banking we provide while we provide an operating system for them to run their business, which brings more and more people into the formal financial ecosystem, so to speak. So that's where, from a platform perspective, they come in. The banking becomes a layer wherein all other things of managing the compliance, automatically not having the headache of understanding how do you reconcile, how do you take money, how do you transact on different systems, disjoint systems, how do you put it all together. So imagine you just doing your transaction, you're understanding your customer, doing the transaction, coming to the platform, and there is a bank who is going to help them with the entire banking scenario. So that's where I would say that digitization is the lead. And then we have to go by the customer need, and then about creating the ecosystem, and that's where all of us collaborate and go ahead. So I would still conclude it with collaboration is the key, and ecosystem is what's going to lead us.
Absolutely. And with that, I guess we have the Times Up board also coming up. So thank you very much, co-panelists. We have some very enlightening thoughts coming in from each of these panelists. I once again thank everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the panel. Let's have a louder round of applause, everyone. And may I request the panel to please pose for a group photo.